So Chair Parks, that's the end of the presentations for today. You now have time as a committee. If you have any questions, any discussion, any deliberations you'd like to make, entirely up to you, Chair.
I would take it that also means if there's anyone who would like additional information about something to be able to ask staff, could XYZ be provided?
Yes.
You know, whatever, that often happens through our meetings. Yeah, Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, going back to the clerk's budget, the finance director was able to,
Which budget?
going back to the clerk's budget,
Clerk's budget, yeah.
and the finance director was able to identify $630,000, what we could consider surplus. Do we need to somehow designate that monies before we pass this budget to be used for the additional ballot cost?
Go ahead.
I get it.
So Chair Smith, those dollars are in this year's budget, and so they're already allocated and appropriated to be spent in this year, because all the
Okay.
corrections will occur before June 30.
Allocated where? Because those were identified as surplus dollars, so if they're surpluses, how can they be allocated, is my point.
So they're identified as net revenue in their projected year end, but in the budget, which you adopted last June, they're appropriated, so they are available to spend. So if we get to the end of this year, June 30, and they're spent, then we won't have that $630,000 to move over to general fund. So the net
Okay.
revenue is what you're just seeing in the
Got it.
projections.
I got it. So the clerk could spend her surpluses for up until June 30th of $630,000 projected on the additional costs she is currently incurring. That's how we do that, is that right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
yes, Elizabeth, thank you very much.
Well, I'm taking a second look at the budget right now. Sandra, would you double check? We have an unappropriated ending fund balance of $682,000. So I would say that we would need an emergency supplemental budget. Because I didn't realize, and I apologize, Chair, I'm looking at
You
it
know
here.
what? Just figure that out and bring it.
We'll figure it out.
Bring it later.
Yeah, but the answer is yes.
Okay, so,
Okay.
good. That's going to be hugely helpful going forward.
But I'll say, Chair Smith, so we're going to resolve that this current fiscal year. So you're talking about next year's budget. This is all going to be resolved by June 30th. We'll do it in the current fiscal year with a
Right.
supplemental
Oh,
budget in the current fiscal year.
I
So-
know, so, but the problem is, I'm concerned that we won't know all those costs in this current fiscal year.
We have a timeline of June 13th at the very latest, and we should absolutely have total cost before June 30.
Good, you
For
guys are good.
staffing.
You're very good.
We'll solve it. We've got it
Thank you.
covered, Chair. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Very
And
nice.
Administrator Schmidt, is there anything that you can tell us about tomorrow? I take it we're going to continue in the same vein as we did this afternoon with grouped sessions on departments?
Yes, the same format we've used today. We'll do the same tomorrow. Based on the efficiency in which you've done this, I actually believe you can finish all department presentations by noon tomorrow, by lunchtime.
Wow.
And then right after lunch, you could do the compensation board discussion, and then you have all afternoon to deliberate.
Okay, I would also note that tomorrow evening is public testimony.
Yes.
I guess I'm a little concerned about doing very much of deliberations without first hearing from the public if we're asking them for input.
In
So
my
can
view,
you
can
help
start-
guide me
You can
through
start
that?
deliberations, not make any decisions until
Okay.
you have the public hearing, and that means Thursday you can be more efficient in how you wrap up your deliberations after you've heard the public comment.
All right, very good, thank you. And just a housekeeping question, is it okay to leave our budget books in here or things like
Yes, we will lock the
like
doors
that?
after you all exit, so
I would
this room will be
prefer
secure.
that instead of hauling it back and forth. Yeah, so, all right, thank you. If there's no other business, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Cernat, I'm sorry, I did not
That's
see
okay.
that up.
At this time, are we going to assume any change to the clerk's current year spending would just be reduced end-of-year balance in the current budget? Okay. And then, what would it take to identify one-time monies separate from recurring monies? Is that something that could be identified, or is too late in the process for that.
Or general fund or all funds?
And one-time money, you mean like ARPA or supportive housing services or things like that?
Yeah, well, because I know a couple of times during presentations, they talked about one-time monies being available. And it'd be nice to know how much of it was, but I understand at this late date, that might not be possible.
I think we have that because it's mostly ARPA dollars, COVID dollars. We've tracked what's come in. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sandra or Elizabeth. We
That
should
would
have
be
that.
really hard for us to obtain. What we could do is we could send out an email to the directors and ask them to reply and give us the one-time numbers, but otherwise, in the budget process, there isn't a way to capture that because we capture it by fund and by category and by line item.
Right.
So one-time versus ongoing isn't a filter that we have available to just run a report on.
Right.
But we could reach out and provide provide an answer based on the response we have.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
There's a
Any
lot.
other,
Oh, questions.
Sonia? Commissioner
So-
Fisher?
Yeah, sorry, I'm struggling here.
There it goes, yeah.
Doing what Tootie was trying to
Put a
do.
big color, bold color on it or something, yeah.
So, good question, but as we went through everything, in my mind, and it's probably because as commissioners, we do the consent agenda, and so we kind of keep up on all of those different expenses, so it was really making sense to me, but I really noticed that, sorry. It's like, oh my goodness, for this period of time, we really increased this budget, and that was why, because it was those one-time dollars. So it's almost like for our purposes as a budget committee, what might be helpful is, if we want to delve into that, is just to look at where there were real bumps during this fiscal year and where it's going away. Because we are not budgeting in most situations for those one-time, they're not there for the most part moving forward.
Yeah, the one complicating factor is the change of accounting reporting also is causing some bumps. So it's not always easy to know which ones are which.
Correct. And the chart of account changes happened in fiscal year 21-22. So where you'll see those differences is if you look at 2021 to 21-22, if there's differences there, but the total for the revenue is relatively flat, that's almost guaranteed a change in a chart of account. If there's variances in the amounts, that's probably CARES or COVID in almost all cases, or new grants. And then when it comes to looking at 21-22, so current year, and comparing it to next year, if there's drops, that is also CARES or COVID revenue. So it's grants that are going away. And the departments where you're going to see that really playing is H3S, some in like juvenile, CCSO, and we could probably call that out for you. The most efficient is if you let us point that out for you without reaching out to the departments. The slower response would be us reaching out to the departments and having them turn it around really quick.
No, I'm open to either. It doesn't
Okay.
matter to me.
Okay.
Then my team's listening and they're going to get on it.
Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier this morning, part of budgeting is looking ahead, and obviously you're looking ahead a year's time and a little bit more, and perhaps even the next year ahead, but it's the extraordinary expenses or the extraordinary circumstances, projects in this case, that I think have to be planned for. We have a responsibility to do that, and I would like to see some kind, I don't know if it's in the horizon or it's planned, but some kind of a look at I'm not asking for 30 years, just a couple, 3, 4, 5 years of the forecast and how we are going to budget for that, how it's going to be done, so we can create a glide path to get there. The runway that Gary was talking about, I was expecting to be this year, that the runway would happen, and I'll go back and listen to the tape of the budget message last year and everything we said, but I was presuming that this would be the year. And I've not seen a path to funding those projects or the extraordinary circumstances that are in front of us.
Commissioner Smith?
Maybe that, Commissioner Savas, was your assumption that you would see that this year. However, it was never my assumption that we'd see that this year, because I believe our administrator has made it very clear that those will be made in the 22-23 budget going forward.
It's right here.
Paul, don't interrupt me.
It's right
Just let me finish. That is not the assumption. Things change over time, and I think that we need to obviously give instructions to our administrator and our finance and budget department to do that. I think we are on a path to, this budget is sustainable. And when you talk about forecasting, forecasting involves decisions that we have not yet made regarding the policy. We have not made decisions on the libraries yet. We have not made certain decisions that would affect our forecasting. Likewise, we have not made decisions on any program reduction that we see going forward. And if any of my commissioner sees something out there, they should tell the administrator or Elizabeth, let's look at this program. Is it necessary going forward? So we have, committee, a lot of decisions to make, I believe, rolling up after July 1st to go forward on this. And I think with mindful, thoughtful deliberations and collaboration, we can get there. But I think, Commissioner Savas, if you're expecting to have a guide path going forward to 3 or 4 years within this week, you're going to be disappointed, because that was never the expectations of this budget or the message I heard from administration.
Commissioner Shaw.
Yes, on this issue, from our Performance-Clackamas County Plan updated March of 2021, build public trust through good government. By July 1, 2022, the county's budget is structurally sound, sustainable, and 100% tied to results. 100% tied to results, I think I can articulate to constituents, but how do what is the message from the Budget Committee to constituents that look at this? What's the message I'm to tell them regarding our achieving this Performance-Clackamas goal by 1 July? What do I say? Now, in other words, they're looking at this too. And if somebody says, okay, Commissioner Shaw, tell me, how do you articulate you're structurally sound and sustainable by 1 July 2022? I'm not sure what to say. And so if somebody can help me, I don't know, Gary, I'm not putting the monkey in your back, but I do need to have an answer for the constituents, because this plan is what they're looking at too. Many of them are.
Would you like an answer now?
Well, no, not now, Gary, because I want to go home and spend. And I want to watch the hummingbirds and count my bees over there, Martha. But that, I'm just saying that is on all these things. As a commissioner, I need to have a message, on the first day of the next fiscal year, so I can actually report that we're making traction on what we said our goals are, not just the one on the budget, but on all of them. So just keep that in mind, and maybe we can talk about it in a few days.
Yes.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, and maybe not today, but maybe tomorrow, just give me the date and time in which we changed our decision from July 1st, 2022. Because that decision was made, when did it change? I just need the date and the meeting and time that we actually changed it to 2023.
Commissioner Fisher.
Okay, must really be missing something. So Gary gave a budget message and talked about big capital construction projects that we are yet making decisions on to finalize, and had a plan of, if we're moving forward, that would be 15 million. We're going to do 2 million in this budget and the rest of it in the next 2 budget cycles. In that mind, that's structurally sound, that's sustainable. And I am missing where the problem is, because we have, like Chair Smith said, yet to make some decisions, but there is a plan going forward. So Gary, I think that you might be useful for you to reiterate how this budget is balanced, structurally sound, and sustainable.
I'd like to see that.
I don't see where the problem is yet. As we've gone through, a day of deliberations, I'm not seeing any red flags as of now. So Gary, I'm looking to you. I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
I guess the issue is you don't all agree on what sustainable means. I'll tell you what it means to me, and I said it in my budget message, and I said it verbally today, where revenues exceed expenses. Revenues are higher than expenses, and that is true. It was true last year. It is true this year. What changes is the policy decisions, as Chair Smith said. Respectfully, Commissioners, you have not decided on a courthouse yet. You're leaning towards it, but you have not decided on a new county courthouse, and you have not decided on 2 new libraries.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to present you a budget with hope until you make that policy decision, and then you'll get it. I've told you for the last year, and I think I may have said it last year, over 3 fiscal years, we will reduce the general fund to help prepare for a future library and courthouse. So if anything, I did not deliver on the $5 million this year. I made $2 million instead of $5 million. So if you wish to make $3 million in cuts, that's your authority to do, and you tell me by Thursday where you'd like to see those $3 million in cuts. Otherwise, what I proposed is next year is going to be the pull the Band-Aid off year and make the cuts that need to be made in the general fund, because you will have decided on a courthouse and libraries by next year. I expect you're going forward on all 3, but you'll tell me that in the next month or so, and then that will come forward. So again, you have a proposed budget. This is now yours, Budget Committee. You can make any changes you wish, and you have 2 days left to do it. Thank you.
Commissioner Fisher, then Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, just to follow up, Gary, that's exactly what I was hoping that you would reiterate, because a budget is a plan. It's a plan moving forward. You've presented a plan. We, as the Budget Committee, get to make the recommendations as to this plan, and it does have all those elements of sustainability, structurally sound, balanced. Thank you.
Commissioner Savas, Commissioner Shaw.
Yeah, so the delta between the 2 million that Gary just talked about and the 5 million is 3 million, as he mentioned. So that's 3 million that otherwise we would not have available. Okay, and then you to incorporate that with last year and backfilling to make last year not a structurally sound. That's the other word or term that needs to be factored in here. It's not just sustainable, it's structurally sound. So that loss of money is millions of dollars. And that's money that we could otherwise be using for these projects. So it's every year's a loss. And I know that's not easy to see because it's not really demonstrated or displayed. So I understand why people are not understanding it.
Commissioner Shaw.
Yeah, I know this is complex, but tomorrow afternoon at 3:45, we have budget deliberations. It would be so good for me if during that time we could have some statement to relieve any kind of anxiety on this issue, because tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, it's probably highly probable that somebody's going to ask about it. And this goes back a few years ago when we were $15 million upside down, which a lot of people are still thinking about. So maybe tomorrow at 6 o'clock we can have some, and I'm not just looking at you, Gary. The monkey's not just on your back, but if we could have something on this issue when this question comes up on it, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. No other comments, ladies and gentlemen, peoples. We are on recess for this evening, and we will reconvene at 8:30 tomorrow morning.